first step to making a chime out of clay or anything is to sketch out what your plan is. You need to kind of have a sketch and an idea of where you need to poke holes and what you need to do in order to make this happen. So I'm just going to sketch out a couple of ideas here. One idea I had was just using a stick from my yard. Once you have an idea, you need to kind of make sure you know what you need in order to hang this, how many holes you need, where you need them, because you can't go back and make those after this clay has been fired. So I'm going to make sure that I have a hole on both sides of each of these tubes that I drew. So that's important to know that. And then if this is a stick, I can, decide to either tie those or however you're gonna make that happen. So this is a pretty simple idea. You can kind of get a little more complex with that idea, or a little creative with that idea and kind of use kind of a traditional chime shape. And on the actual pieces of clay. So if you have one Okay, that's 2 ideas, and like I always tell you to do, 3 sketches. My last sketch is going to be something that looks kind of like a paint palette. Hang that, and then underneath that, I will hang paintbrushes. You can kind of decide, they don't have to just be tubes of clay. You can sculpt these pieces of clay into whatever you want them to be. Once you have your sketch and you decided which one you'd like to do, then you just need to kind of create it. I'm going to show you in this part of the video how to do a couple of different kinds of clay pieces for your chimes. So the first one is going to be like a tube. So if you wanted to make several tubes to make that sound kind of hollow through those tubes, I always start off with just like I roll out a slab. You know, if you want it to be a good decent size for a slab, about a 1/4 inch thick, maybe thinner. It doesn't really matter that much. Then I'm just gonna cut this little strip like this. I always use like this is a dowel rod, but you could also easily use a marker or a broom handle or whatever you have available. We have dowel rods in our classroom. Something that's round. I put a piece of paper towel around it so that the clay doesn't stick to the actual dowel rod. And then I start just kind of rolling this around. I'm gonna flip it this way. Okay, where this meets here, I want to score and slip that. So we need to make score marks. All right, and then roll that into itself. Where that seam is, remember we want to blend. So that we can't see the seam. The more you push on this clay, after you kind of get like blended this, the more you kind of push and pull on this, the looser it's going to be around that dowel rod. Change shape. If you want it to be nice and round, make sure you kind of come back and roll that back out. This is the part where I always add texture to this because I'm going to use my dowel rod in there. So you can kind of add texture any way you want. I have this fork here and I think that it's going to do a pretty good job, or if you have a modeling tool or something, but I think I kind of want like just kind of like divots texture wise in there. I think actually I'm going to use the back of this fork actually. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, if you have really long pieces, it depends on how long you want those chime tubes to be. But if it's long enough, you could cut this in half and have two of them, but if it's not, you just have the one. Once that's textured to your desire, then you can pull this right off of there. It'll slide right out. If your paper towel gets stuck, it's okay, it'll burn up in the kiln. Okay, and then there's your one tube. Before I move on, I'm kind of just gonna cut this nice and straight and even. The last thing that you want to do is figure out how where you're gonna hang this. Remember, if you're hanging it from the top here, I'm gonna go ahead and make two holes, one like a hole that goes all the way through it. So one that's here, one on the other side, straight through. And I'm just gonna kind of wiggle. If you notice, if I like wiggle this, it makes the hole a little wider. I just want to widen that hole to make sure that it doesn't close up and I can still put some string through it. Once you've gotten that, you can set that aside and work on the next one. Another way to make chime pieces is instead of making a tube, if you just wanted it to be a strip of clay that's textured on both sides, you could do that as well. I always like to use a ruler just to kind of have nice straight lines, and use a ruler to cut a strip out. If you wanted your strip to have a certain shape to it, you could cut it that way. Okay. Again, if you wanted to add texture, you can add texture by creating texture. You could use something to imprint texture. Okay. I want to make sure that I do both sides because this is going to spin. Just like this one, I did texture all the way around all the sides. I want to do the same thing here. Okay, there's another way. Again, you can't forget to go ahead and make your hole wherever you're going to be hanging this. Here's where I'm going to be hanging this, so I'm going to go ahead and put my hole in here, and again, wiggling makes that a little bit bigger to put the string through. There's one option. Another option could be if you wanted to just make solid shapes. You can get a piece of clay and roll out a coil. This will only work if your coils are, you know, probably like less than an inch thick. Otherwise, it's going to take a lot longer to dry, and you don't want to risk cracks or holes or issues in it. So this could be one. You could also alter the shape of this if you wanted. Cut this down, make it nice and smooth, kind of, you know, shape. You kind of really option any of your options, endless options. Same thing, I'm gonna kind of stick at the same kind of texture that's going on. You could do something like this for your chime pieces that are hanging down. You just want to make sure you're texturing on all the sides, because these are tend to spin in the wind. That's what you want them to do. Don't forget your hole. Okay. If you wanted to cut out shapes, you could cut out shapes. For instance, if you wanted to create heart pieces hanging down, you could draw your shape. Cut it out. Make sure whatever you're doing, you're looking for quality, nice and neatness, because no matter how hard you work at something, if it's really messy, it's not going to look very good. Or you can sculpt a piece of something that you would want, like the example I had with the paintbrushes. These are just some of the millions of possibilities, options that you can do to create your pieces for your chime. If you need a bead for your chime, you just get a little bit of clay. Decide what size you need. Make a circle or a sphere and use that trusty pin tool. Poke a hole straight through. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Again, you want to make sure that's wide enough that you can put a string in it. If it's not wide enough, or if you make the hole too skinny, you won't be able to get that string through. So you have a bead if you need that. To put this together, you need some kind of string. You've already poked your holes and made sure you have nice holes poked. So I'm just going to push this through. When I make this double knot, I kind of want to just make sure that I am pulling it down so that it knot's on top of the other knot. Okay. And then I'll tie this. I'm gonna hold this here, make sure it's the right length, and do this for each one. Finish chimes. You can hear them. When the wind blows, you'll hear them chime together. Finished.